Emma Carter never thought a simple favor for her younger sister would change the course of her life. That morning had begun like any other, her small apartment, the quiet hum of her kettle, the stack of lesson plans she had promised to finish for her part-time teaching job. But when Lily called, her voice hoarse and weak from a flu that had kept her bedridden for 2 days, Emma knew she couldn't say no. "Please, Lily begged, just this once, cover my shift. If I miss another day, I'll lose the job." Emma hesitated. She had never done house cleaning work before, let alone in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. Still, she agreed, slipping into Lily's neatly pressed maid uniform and promising to return the borrowed cleaning kit by evening. When Emma arrived at the grand estate, her breath caught in her throat. The house was like something out of a magazine: white stone walls, towering windows, and a front door that looked as though it could open to another world. Inside, the atmosphere was spotless but strangely hollow, as though it lacked the warmth that turned the house into a home. Emma moved quietly, wiping surfaces and dusting corners, determined not to attract attention. Yet as she polished the banister of the grand staircase, a small voice startled her. "Who are you?" Turning quickly, Emma saw a boy no older than 6, with tousled brown hair and solemn eyes clutching a toy car as if it were his only friend. Before she could answer, a commanding voice cut across the room. "Liam, what did I tell you about wandering?" Emma's heart jolted as her gaze rose to meet the man who had spoken. He was tall, dressed in a tailored suit that marked him as someone powerful, though the faint shadows under his eyes hinted at sleepless nights. Alexander Carter, she realized, the CEO her sister had often whispered about with awe. His eyes landed on her with sharp curiosity. "And you are?" he asked. Emma stumbled over her words, explaining quickly that she was Lily's sister and had come to cover the shift. Instead of reprimanding her, Alexander gave a short nod and ushered his son back down the hall. Emma exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. She had expected nothing more than a day of cleaning, but the sadness in the boy's eyes and the weariness in the father's expression told her this household carried a story she had not yet uncovered. Emma had expected her first day in the mansion to also be her last, but when Lily remained bedridden, she returned the following morning, still uneasy yet oddly drawn back to the house that seemed to carry hidden loneliness in its walls. To her surprise, no one questioned her presence, and soon one day became several. Alexander Carter remained distant, a man who spoke in clipped sentences and carried himself like he was made of steel, but his little boy Liam grew more attached to her with each visit. Instead of rushing through chores, Emma found herself pausing to listen to his stories, crouching down as he proudly showed her his drawings of dinosaurs and rocket ships. His eyes, once clouded with sadness, sparkled whenever she gave him her full attention. It pained her to see how hungrily he clung to any shred of care, and though she tried to remind herself she was only standing in for Lily, Emma couldn't help but let her heart open to him. One evening, while polishing the kitchen counters, she overheard Alexander's deep voice echoing from his study. The door was slightly ajar, and though she knew she shouldn't listen, his frustration anchored her in place. "I don't have time for another nanny trial," he snapped into the phone. "Liam doesn't connect with them. Stop sending strangers into my home." Emma froze, realization washing over her. Perhaps her presence wasn't simply tolerated, but silently welcomed. Later that night, as she gathered her things to leave, Alexander appeared in the doorway. His gaze lingered on her longer than before, softer this time, as though something had shifted. "Liam talks about you," he said simply, his voice low, almost reluctant. "He hasn't done that with anyone in a long time." Emma blinked in surprise, warmth filling her chest at his confession. She smiled, brushing back a loose strand of hair. "He's a wonderful boy," she replied gently. "He just needs someone who notices him." Their eyes met in a stillness that neither expected, and for the first time, Emma saw not the untouchable CEO her sister had described, but a weary father carrying the quiet weight of grief and responsibility. Though she walked out into the cool night air moments later, her thoughts remained with the boy who clung to her kindness and the man who, despite his walls, seemed to need it just as much. Days slipped into weeks, and Emma realized she was no longer just covering for her sister, she was becoming part of a world she hadn't planned on entering. The mansion, once cold and silent, seemed to grow warmer each time Liam's laughter echoed down the hallways, a sound that had become music to her ears. She baked cookies with him in the kitchen, sat cross-legged on the floor helping him piece together puzzles, and read him stories in a soothing voice that lulled him into peaceful sleep. What surprised her most was that Alexander occasionally joined them. At first, he stood at a distance, watching with a guarded expression, but little by little he allowed himself to sit at the table, roll dice during board games, or even help Liam build towers of blocks. The first time Emma saw the mighty CEO laugh, genuine, unguarded laughter, over a toppled tower of toy bricks, her heart stirred in a way she couldn't ignore. Yet her growing attachment came with a dangerous secret. She was still pretending to be Lily on paper, and every passing day made it harder to imagine what would happen if Alexander discovered the truth. That moment came sooner than she expected. One afternoon, as she tidied the living room, she left her tote bag by the sofa, and when Alexander returned home earlier than usual, he noticed a folder peeking out with her real name neatly written on it. He said nothing at first, but later, when Liam was upstairs, he confronted her in the kitchen, his voice calm but edged with disappointment. "You're not Lily," he said, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. Emma's chest tightened as guilt rose inside her, and she confessed everything, that she was Lily's older sister, that she only meant to help for a single day, and that she never intended to deceive him or his son. She braced herself for anger, maybe even dismissal, but instead Alexander's expression softened. "You're the first person Liam has trusted in years," he admitted quietly. "I can't ask you to leave." In that moment, the tension melted into something unspoken but powerful, a fragile bond built not on duty, but on shared wounds. That evening, as Alexander walked her to the door, he revealed the truth that explained the heaviness she had always sensed in his eyes. His wife had died when Liam was only a toddler, leaving him with grief and guilt he had never learned to lay down. Emma listened, her heart aching, and when she finally spoke, her words were gentle yet firm. "You're not failing him, Alexander. He just needs to see you." And for the first time, he didn't look like the CEO who ruled empires, he looked like a father desperately searching for redemption. As spring unfurled its gentle warmth across the city, the Carter mansion no longer felt like the cold, lonely house Emma had first walked into. Flowers bloomed in the garden, curtains were drawn open to let in light, and most importantly, laughter seemed to fill the air where silence once reigned. Liam thrived under the new rhythm, his smiles came quicker, his laughter louder, his trust deeper. Emma often found herself caught between joy and fear, joy at the bond they had formed and fear that it might not last forever. She reminded herself constantly that she wasn't family, just a woman who had stepped in to help her sister, yet the truth was undeniable, this home had started to feel like hers too. One evening, after reading Liam his favorite bedtime story and watching him drift off with a smile, Emma stepped quietly into the garden where Alexander stood beneath the soft glow of lanterns. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his usually composed expression gentled by something she could only describe as vulnerability. "Emma," he began, his voice lower, slower, as though each word carried a weight he had been afraid to drop, "I don't know how this happened, but I find myself needing you. Not just for Liam, though he adores you, but for me too." Emma's breath caught, her heart hammering at the raw honesty in his tone. This was the man she had first seen as distant, unreachable, untouchable, now stripped of every wall he had built around himself. Slowly, she stepped closer, her hand brushing his, the contact sending warmth through her chest. "I think," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tremble in her heart, "I needed you too." The words hung between them before Alexander closed the distance, pulling her gently into his arms, not as a man desperate for comfort, but as one finally choosing to embrace it. Emma leaned into him, her eyes stinging with tears she hadn't expected, realizing that what had begun as a favor had turned into a destiny she never could have imagined. Inside the house, Liam shifted in his sleep, his small hand resting on the toy car he never let go of, his lips curved in a contented smile as though even in dreams he felt the change around him. Emma knew then, with certainty, that she had not only found love in the most unlikely place but had also discovered something rarer, a family she hadn't been searching for, but one she was meant to keep.